Hi, I'm Ernesto Juan from ZuDhan Productions, and this is another episode of our series Traveling to Cuba Legally from the United States. A few days ago, somebody asked me in the vlog, "Hi Ernesto, I'm planning to visit a trip to Havana, leaving December 30th and returning Monday, January the 2nd. Question number one, can we design our own trip? Question number two, is it likely that there will be commercial flights from Florida to Havana at that time?" Well, question number one, yes, you can design your own trip, but remember your trip has to follow under the 12 categories allowed by the U.S. government. That American citizens can travel to Cuba only under these 12 categories. In previous episodes, in episode 2 and 3, we broke down together with Orlando Consuela these 12 categories. Question number two, is it likely that there will be commercial flights from Florida to Havana at that time? Well, in our previous episode, I said that even though 8 U.S. carriers had been granted permission by the Department of Transportation to fly to Cuba as early as September, it is very unlikely that this will happen at that time. In this last episode, I analyzed, for example, American Airlines is already selling their tickets to Havana and Holguin, the province of Holguin. But when you go to their website, the tickets to Havana don't exist for as long as September, October, November, December, and January. You cannot buy any tickets through American Airlines. However, you can buy tickets to the province of Holguin in the eastern part of Cuba. Now, T.S.A., which is the Transportation Security Administration, said last Wednesday that scheduled airline flights from Cuba will not be allowed until security in the Cuban airports is as tight as any other foreign airport sending flights to this country. T.S.A.'s decision follows a legislation presented by 3 House lawmakers who said that they had security concerns that these direct flights from Cuba could ease the flow of terrorists and bombs into the United States. The move to halt these flights came a week after the Transportation Department of the United States had granted permission to 8 airlines to fly directly between Cuba and the United States. Now, T.S.A., which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, must certify that Cuba meets the standards for screening passengers and luggage before direct flights begin. T.S.A. is working on the security review of the Cuban airports and plans to complete the assessment before the scheduled flights begin. The T.S.A. said it's conducting assessments to determine compliance with international security requirements, including passenger screening, baggage screening, aircraft security, cargo security, and airport operations. The House lawmakers who presented this legislation last week were John Katko, who is a Republican from New York, Richard Hudson, which is another Republican from North Carolina, and Harry Kular, who is a Democrat from Texas. Actually, what they want is they want to block the flights until the T.S.A. certifies that Cuba has the screening equipment and airport worker training to meet U.S. security standards. The bill asks the Government Accountability Office to confirm that Cuba meets the standards. These lawmakers also want an agreement that allows U.S. Marshals to fly undercover and can be armed in these flights to thwart terrorists on these flights. So yes, there is a lot of resistance, like I said before, that against any kind of opening between Cuba and the United States. CNN ran a story a few days ago that said that Representative John Katko from New York said that the move has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with security of the flying public. And then he quotes, "It may turn out there is nothing to be worried about, but we can take a chance." Katko, who is from Syracuse, specifically wants to know whether Cuban airports have efficient screening technology for passengers, luggage, and cargo, and whether the Cuban government will allow U.S. Marshals to fly on these flights. Katko is also concerned that these airports could make Cuba the new, and I quote, "new gateway into the United States for terrorists." How about that? The legislation also calls for the Government Accountability Office to conduct an independent audit on T.S.A.'s report to Congress an agreement between the U.S. and Cuba that would allow air marshals to fly between the two countries, and an agreement is signed between the two countries allowing T.S.A. full access to all Cuban airports. Remember, we're talking about 10 Cuban airports with direct flights to and from the United States to conduct security assessments. These three House lawmakers asked for a visa to fly to Cuba, and their visas were denied. Were the visas denied because actually Cuba doesn't have the infrastructure and security measures for screening luggage and passengers who are flying back from Cuba back to the United States? I don't know. But these three House lawmakers were denied their visas, so they cannot fly. And until Cuba doesn't prove that they have all this technology for screening passengers and cargo and luggage to fly from Cuba, directly from Cuba to the United States, then TSA will not allow. TSA will block these flights between Cuba and the United States. So the person who asked if she could fly to Cuba in December for a New Year from Florida to Havana, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be possible, at least on these scheduled direct flights. But this is not the end of the world, because people can still fly to Cuba on charter airplanes. So there are many charter airlines who are flying to Cuba nowadays. So for now, no, there won't be any scheduled direct flights between Cuba and the United States, or between the United States and Cuba. TSA is not allowing that. And this follows a legislation presented by three House lawmakers who said that they had concerns about security of these flights being an influx of terrorists and bombs into the United States. How do you like that? So, all right, I hope you like our comments. So I ask you to subscribe down below and write your comments and give us any opinions or ask any questions you might have about if you're planning a trip to Cuba. So until our next episode, see you then.